Everyone, welcome to the Get More Sports College Basketball Podcast, where today we're previewing the second week of NCAA tournament action as Sweet 16 play starts Thursday, and we'll have our Final Four decided by Sunday night. Pretty unbelievable that the season has gone by so fast, but alas, here we are. So to get you ready for the next round of games, I'll be your jovial host, Michael Krumholtz, joined by a pair of great Americans and proud anti-vegans, my friends Brandy Mann and William Whalen. How are you guys today?
I'm as anti-vegan as I ever have been today. It's wonderful. I mean, tons of man protein.
Yeah, I hope you guys...
People eating tasty animals.
I hope you guys had your fill of bacon this morning, ready to get going.
Okay. The meat candy, always a good starter.
So before we dive into previewing the Sweet 16, I just want to take a second to get some quick reactions from the first week of the tournament. Let's go around here and get a quick breakdown on, one, your guys' best players up to this date of the tournament, as well as which coaches you think have either really raised their stock for bigger jobs or just in general who have done the best job here. So, Randy, I'll start with you on that one. And by the way, shout out to you for last week saying Villanova would get beat by NC State. Props on that.
That's right. Go NC State. The Wolf Pack is back. The Cardiac Pack. Loving it. So I guess, to answer that question, one of the coaches that would sort of stand out is Gottfried himself. Outstanding job to raise the level of his players. And get them ready for that game. It was a phenomenal game. I was glad to see it. So go Pack. Some of the other coaches, maybe worth highlighting always. Tom Izzo, in March. He's just the guy to bet with in March, it seems. And then of course the cat from Georgia State, Ron Hunter, has certainly raised his market value through this tournament. So those are some of the coaches that I think really sort of stood out in the first round of games.
Yeah, to add to that, quite frankly, I've been impressed all year with what Chris Holtmann at Butler has done. Butler really was not supposed to be anywhere near this good, and they got a really tough draw in the first round. We talked about it the last time we all talked, and we all thought Texas had a real good shot at beating Butler there. But Butler takes care of business in the way that Butler consistently does. I was incredibly impressed by them. They take Notre Dame right down to the wire, and Notre Dame's a really good team. So I think Chris Holtmann really further solidified himself as not only being worthy of that job that he was given, but really being one of the better coaches that we have, or at least turning in one of the better coaching jobs that we've seen this year. Another name, we've talked about him all year, Archie Miller at Dayton, to win 2 games the way they did. Obviously, they had the advantage over Boise State, and Michael may not want to admit it, but that was a farce. Them getting a home game like that. It really was. I get that the first 4 is always in Dayton, but Dayton should not have been in those games. They were a better team than that. UCLA probably should have been in those games. Props to Dayton, though, for taking care of business when they could, despite fouling Derek Marks with the clock winding down against Boise State and lucking on to face Providence. But they do play Providence, and they dominate Providence. They make Providence look pretty average. And I loved Providence all year. We all talked about it. So Archie Miller continues to show why he's one of the better coaches in America. And then, of course, on the other side of the bracket, I love me some Greg Marshall at Wichita State. I really do. You know how bad he wanted this game over Kansas. Everybody in the world knows how bad he wanted that game over Kansas. And they got it. And what's also cool about Greg Marshall, of course, is, yesterday he's interviewed and he says, if Alabama throws me a really big offer, I'll listen, because why the hell wouldn't I? I love that, a coach not giving us all BS. I really do enjoy that, and when I can get that from a coach. So those guys really stand out to me as well. But I'll tell you, another name that we never talked about this year, and a team that we rarely talked about this year, I love the job that Chris Mack at Xavier is doing right now.
Yeah.
Look, they did not get a tough draw, okay? They were going to play one of the play-in teams that had already played, that was probably coming in a bit tired, and Ole Miss put up a fight for probably 10 minutes, but they shellacked the Rebels. I mean, they were one of the only teams in the first round who absolutely took care of business in styling fashion. And then, of course, they take on – playing a team like Georgia State is not easy. When a team has that much momentum and that much belief in themselves, that's not easy to beat them when you might not have the most dynamic personnel in the tournament. And Xavier, of course, takes care of business. I'm really excited for that matchup with Arizona. So I think those coaches really impressed me personally. And, of course, added on to the ones that Randy mentioned.
Sure, and then just to get a most impressive player up to this date for both of you guys, Will, we'll start with you. Who has been your tournament MVP through the first weekend?
This is going to sound so weird because, quite frankly, I usually despise the way he plays basketball. But Bryce Alford has been fantastic for UCLA.
I was going to say the exact same thing.
He has been fantastic. There are obviously other guys who have played well. Probably my second place in the MVP would be a tie between Fred Van Vliet of Wichita State and Travis Trice of Michigan State. But, man, I am super impressed by the way Bryce Alford is playing right now. He'd probably be my most valuable player in the first couple rounds.
Sure, Bryce Alford has.
Yeah, I would agree with that as well. I mean, Bryce, what he had, he went up 9 for 11 against SMU, I think.
Yeah.
And then, came out with the same sort of consistency against UAB. What a great thing. You got father and son coach and player. Same thing we saw with Georgia State, and the kids are rising to the occasion to either win for themselves or win more for their pops. So it's pretty nice to see. Will, you mentioned Fred Van Vliet, but how about Evan Wessel?
That's a good pick too. That's a great
best games, that I thought, for the weekend. But just the way Wichita State hit Kansas in the mouth, and that kid just sat back and he hit some of the biggest threes throughout the game. Hit 3 or 4 that were just crucial points in the game that just stopped any sort of run or momentum that Kansas might have, and he just sort of quietly, helped Wichita to a great win.
Yeah, good call.
One other player I would like to mention, just because he's overshadowed all the time, is Justice Winslow from Duke. All the fever, I guess, goes towards Okafor, but that kid is shutting players down. He's getting rebounds. He's getting all the 50-50 balls. He's doing everything and just quietly becoming a stud for Duke. So those are my top players.
Sure, and Winslow is a part of that number 1 seed Duke that is surging. 5 teams for the ACC in the Sweet 16, which ties the NCAA record. So, Will, about 2 months ago, we posed the question on here as to what the best conference in basketball was. Essentially, it was between the Big 12 and the ACC, as the common thinking was that the Big 12 was the deepest league and that the ACC was the most top-heavy league. But now, after the first week of the tournament, we have a pretty clear answer as to what the best conference in 2015 is, and it's clearly ACC, which, as mentioned, ties that NCAA tournament record. 5 teams in, could at best have 4 teams in the Elite 8, as Louisville and NC State square off. They'll cancel each other out. But on the other hand, the Big 12 has completely gone up in flames. Iowa State loses to UAB. Baylor loses to Georgia State. As mentioned, Kansas gets beat up by Wichita State. And Oklahoma State and Texas both dropped their openers as well. So now only Oklahoma and West Virginia remain from a league that got 7 bids, and both of those teams enter their Sweet 16 games as underdogs. So, Randy, to get back to the ACC, could they realistically have 2 teams in the Final Four? I think the most likely pairing of that would be Duke and either the Louisville NC State winner. I know you have NC State in the Final Four, as you said last week. So how do you see that going forward? How do you see the ACC improving on this?
I see 3 teams in the Final Four. I see UNC, Duke, and NC State. I'm sticking with it.
Okay.
I mean, it's It's a Tobacco Road Final Four. Why not? As far as the ACC, conference, battle there. I mean, ACC is what the SEC is to football. I mean, they are the powerhouse conference. It always seems to begin and end there with the ACC, and the three teams that I'm picking, and sure, some might think it's a far fetch, but NC State, playing the way they are, they're fearless, they're dangerous, and they've already proven they can beat Louisville earlier this year. So I think they stand a good chance to beat that team, and then if they get Michigan State or Oklahoma, carrying that momentum, wouldn't shock me to see them get in there. I think Duke, certainly will have its hands full with Utah, in that game, but I think they get in as well. And then I think UNC, if Kennedy Meeks plays, certainly they need his help and size, but I think they match up well against Wisconsin. We'll see how well, Dakota can, maybe defend Decker, at that point. But, I like their chances, and of course I'm biased. I love Tobacco Road, and big ups to Cackalack. Let's see all three teams get in.
Okay, North Carolina dominated Final Four. We will see about Kennedy Meeks. Roy Williams says that he's doubtful, but that could just be old Roy playing mind games heading into that game with Wisconsin. And Will, I'll come to you to speak on behalf of the Big 12 conference that we've talked about a ton on here. So give us your thoughts as to why teams like Iowa State and Kansas looked so flat in the tournament. And speaking of Final Four picks, I know last week you said you've got Oklahoma as one of your Final Four teams. So I assume you're sticking with that pick from the East region that's lost its top two seeds. So kind of go into why the Big 12's other top teams fell and if Oklahoma can carry the flag for the league.
At one point I wanted to say it was because, they just got bad draws, but no. It was a complete and utter no-show job by most of the conference. I mean, look, Texas has been what they are, and Butler is a good team. They really are. I mean, they're a good team. But that's a game that Texas probably, talent-wise, should have won. And yet it's the same old Texas. They utterly refuse to get their big men involved. It's just Isaiah Taylor at the top of the key going one-on-one for the last 9 minutes. Rick Barnes gets paid $2 million to have Isaiah Taylor go one-on-one and do the do-em offense for 9 minutes. Okay, I'm sorry, I'm going off on a tangent there, but it's like that's the kind of thing that the Big 12 can't afford. You can't afford to have one of your most high-profile programs tank like that. And it really, to me, is really a condemnation of the Big 12 when Texas looks as bad as they did. Because Texas was one of those teams that a lot of us were saying, okay, they might not get into the tournament, but I still think that if they were in another league, they'd probably finish second or third. A lot of us were saying that. Texas could still be a really good team. But given the evidence that we have now, maybe the Big 12 wasn't as deep as we thought. Okay, well, what about the top? Kansas. Kansas is, without a doubt, the most damning piece of evidence there is against the Big 12 being highly overrated. Because Kansas controlled the league from start to finish. Things got dicey at one point with Iowa State getting right with them and being tied in the loss column. But Kansas controlled their destiny in the Big 12 the entire year. And they get whipped. And they look bad while getting whipped to Wichita State. It's just, I think that is the true indicator of this conference, that a team that looks that terrible in the second round against a good but not great Wichita State team controls their conference from start to finish. So I think clearly the Big 12, in my opinion, it does say something about the Big 12. It does say something about the Big 12 maybe not being quite as strong as we thought. Still a very good conference. Without a doubt. There's a lot of good players, a lot of great coaches, and obviously good programs. But maybe it wasn't as strong as we thought, not as deep as we thought. Certainly Iowa State I had in the Final Four, and they do a complete no-show job against UAB. They looked awful. Georges Niang was terrible.
Ooh,
I was tweeting during that game, I'm like, Georges Niang is just throwing up hot garbage right now. I mean, it was actually Iowa State is one of my favorite teams to watch because they move the ball, they get out in transition, and they rebound with authority. They did none of those three things against UAB, a pretty darn average UAB team. Okay, guys, I mean, let's just call a spade a spade. UAB is not talented offensively. They didn't knock down a single jumper until like a minute left, and Iowa State loses. I mean, it's a complete no-show job. It's a conference that really had a chance to validate themselves, and I'm not even one for the narrative that says, oh, you know, if teams lose early in the NCAA tournament, that reflects badly on their conference, because guess what? The Pac-12 wasn't that good, and they've got 3 teams left, okay? The Pac-12 wasn't anything really huge to write home about, and they're still alive. It's all about matchups, but still. I mean, the way the Big 12 bowed out is really disappointing, and the ACC is clearly king this year, and I don't think there's really an argument to say otherwise.
Yeah, I think you make a good point that it was through the lens of Iowa State and Kansas, the 2 kings of the conference, the way, you know, that Kansas gets manhandled by their state rival, Wichita State, and the way that Iowa State, namely Georges Niang, played in that game. Just bad all around. It is kind of a damning indictment of the Big 12. But again, we'll see if Oklahoma can go on a run here. We'll see if maybe West Virginia can do something against Kentucky. Not hold my breath, but we'll see. So, with those Sweet 16 games in mind, let's run through each game coming up here on Thursday and Friday and give some analysis, some matchups, some players to watch, as well as picks, both against the spread and straight up. So these lines are up to date as of Wednesday afternoon. First game up, which really just has the feel of a classic game that's going to be close. Wichita State -2 favorites against Notre Dame. Despite being the 7th seed, the Shockers are the favorites. But both teams are coming off highly emotional games in their previous outings. Of course, Wichita State beats their state rival in the first time they've played since 1993, while Notre Dame comes back to beat Butler in overtime with some clutch shooting down the stretch. Again, this one just feels like it's going to be a great game. But Will, matchup-wise, who do you give the edge here to in this battle of really guard-heavy teams?
I like Wichita State here because, number one, I mean, it's kind of hard to ignore like teams of destiny, you know, that have the storyline because Wichita State comes into the year last year undefeated into the tournament and then falls in the second round to Kentucky in a classic all-time game. This is kind of their revenge tour. They knock off their hated in-state rival, the Kansas Jayhawks, and now they're riding high. And look, Notre Dame is more potent offensively, I think, than Wichita State is. However, I'm going to go with Wichita State because I think Wichita State can punch you in the mouth and not stop punching. I don't know that Notre Dame can take a punch in the mouth and swing back on the interior, in the open court, and really on 50-50 balls the way that Wichita State can. I really do like Mike Bray as a coach, but I think Greg Marshall has this group playing their best ball of the year in these last week. And I think Wichita State moves on. I do think that the points, I do take Wichita State with that. And I think the Shockers move on to the Elite Eight, which I believe, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think this would be their second in 3 years. So really one of the better programs in America right now.
Hey, Randy, are you on board with that too, taking Wichita State up to -2?
It's the one game that's toss-up for me. I mean, you know, like Will said, Wichita State can't hit you in the mouth, and they damn sure did that with Kansas. I don't know that Kansas played that bad. I mean, like you said, they probably didn't look as good as they were earlier in the year or some other games, but it was just one of those games. To me, it was the best game of the weekend, you know, to actually sit down and watch and gear up for. And I thought Wichita State looked phenomenal. I thought they were composed. I thought they, obviously they were well coached. And there's just something about that experience, seeing those guys. And like Will just mentioned, the last 3 years they've been there, they've been president, and they pretty much carry the same stock that they've had the last 3 years, with Van Fleet and Ron Baker and Cotton. And these guys, and earlier mentioned this Wessel kid. I mean, there's just something about them that, their stock definitely raised with me. But Notre Dame I've liked all year. And so I have a hard time. It's probably a game I'm not going to touch as far as, my bankroll goes. I think it's going to be a great game, though.
Sure. Okay.
That was a fancy way of not answering the question. It's a toss-up.
Sure. Yeah, it's going to be one of those games, I think. Next one up is North Carolina versus Wisconsin. An interesting line here just because factoring in injuries, as we said, Kennedy Meeks might be out. Wisconsin, 6-point favorite right now. Sam Decker and Nigel Harris on the wing really stepped up against Oregon when Frank Kaminsky had a relatively quiet outing, although he still scored 16 points. But for UNC, the big question remains as to whether Meeks will be able to play. Williams has said he's doubtful. But without Meeks or having him limited here, it would definitely make it much tougher to stop Kaminsky inside. Randy, without the big man, what reason do people have to pick UNC here for the upset?
Well, number one, pedigree. I mean, Carolina, is always there, is always present. They do have some experience, and they've got other guys that can step up. And that's what Carolina basketball does. If Bryce Johnson can have a big game, the kid Hicks has got some size. He can step in and maybe fill that role, as well as they got a 6'10" junior Joel James that can step up, and that's what's going to be required. And part of that Carolina heritage says that, hey, we're here, we're in the Sweet 16, we're supposed to be here. And, maybe they can fulfill that. Their biggest challenge isn't going to be, the lack of Kennedy Meeks. It's going to be them not turning the ball over, which is, the most frustrating thing to watch as a Carolina fan, time and time again. So if they can, control the ball and, maybe stop, Decker, or at least, prevent him from having a large impact, and then just try to contain him. I think they've got a great shot. I'll point in this one, so, definitely all of Carolina taking the points. I think it's going to be a good game, Then again, if they turn the ball over, as they've been prone to do, it could be a blowout, so.
And Will, who do you see the matchup favoring in this one?
I actually really like Wisconsin in this one. I probably won't touch this one with my bankroll, but I do like Wisconsin there because I believe in their consistency. I really do. I think on their best day, North Carolina is one of the top probably 4 teams in the country. I really do believe that because when Marcus Page and Takoto, and of course when Meeks is healthy, Bryce Johnson, the emergence of Justin Jackson, when all those guys are going at their best, they're really, really tough. I just don't believe them in their ability to carry it over game after game after game. Whereas Wisconsin plays a style of basketball that is much more reliable game to game. And then when you add the talent that they have, the Bronson Koenigs, of course Nigel Hayes, of course Sam Decker, Frank Kaminsky, guys like that, when you throw them in, it gives them another dimension. What's really going to be interesting, though, and this is going to be the deciding factor of the game, I think Wisconsin can force North Carolina to take bad first shots. I really do. The question will be if they can keep them from getting really good second and third shots around the rim off the offensive boards. That to me is going to determine the game because if you allow North Carolina those opportunities, it makes up for any turnovers that the guards might kind of force themselves into. It makes up really for letting them get out and transition a couple times. I really do believe that the game will be won on the defensive glass for Wisconsin. I think that they have the personnel to do it. I really do believe that they have the consistency to do it. I like Wisconsin moving on. In terms of the spread, though, That's a scary situation. Wisconsin can knock down free throws late in the game, though, and so I do think that their lead will kind of, I will say, kind of inorganically inflate as the clock winds down.
Okay, so I'm getting a lot of flip-flopping answers from you guys. Well, is that
Give me Wisconsin. Give me Wisconsin.
Wisconsin -6. There we go. There we go.
And go Heels, I'll take the points.
Okay. Yeah, UNC can match up with anything on an athletic level, can match up with anyone in the country. But Wisconsin, if they get Decker and Harris to continue this spectacular play, they are one of the very best teams in the country. Moving on, the very best team in the country, Kentucky, enters 13.5 points favorites against West Virginia. I'm really excited for this one, actually, because West Virginia is every bit as deep as Kentucky. Now, no, they don't have future NBA players like Trey Lyles and Devin Booker coming off the bench. But we know about West Virginia that they're going to play tough. They're going to play scrappy. The big question is that if that can propel them to keep it close. So what say you, Will? Can Bob Huggins and company keep this within 13.5?
I actually think they will, because West Virginia and Cincinnati are similar in the fact that they come at you with really, really physical style of play, and especially West Virginia on the perimeter. Cincinnati's packed in a little bit more under the three-point line with their physicality. West Virginia's got it from the 1 through 5 positions, the entire length of the court. And my question is going to be, when Tyler Ulis comes into the game, how does he deal with those traps that they will see in the backcourt? My other question, how will the Harrisons deal with physicality? Because I have not been silent about this. The Harrison twins are not exactly people who love physical contact. They don't love to be pressured. I still think they're a little bit unreliable with the ball in their hands in terms of having to make decisions against a pressure defense. So I think the perimeter is going to give a lot of problems to Kentucky. Of course, the interior is going to give West Virginia all the problems. Devin Robinson's really good for them, but he can't match up with the 3 7-footers that Kentucky's going to throw his way. But I do think West Virginia keeps it under 13. I really like that spread for them.
Okay, and how about you, Randy? You don't even have Kentucky, or as of last week, you didn't have Kentucky escaping the region. Do you think West Virginia is going to keep it within 13.5?
I still don't have them escaping the region. Actually, there's a futures bet out. I think West Virginia might be 17-1 to come out of there. Notre Dame is 8-1, as well as Wichita State. So I've taken all 3 of those teams against Kentucky, like we were talking last week. Taking the field against Kentucky. And I'm sticking with that. I like this matchup. I love the points. I think West Virginia, definitely covers because they are going to bring that physicality. It's just a matter of whether they can control some of the glass and make some baskets and make the press effective. I mean, if they can't make the press effective, then they are going to have a hard time. And I don't know that you can change up, but I think Bob Huggins is going to get the best of them, and I love the points. I'm on the money line. I'm all over West Virginia in this one.
All right.
Go West Virginia.
I love it.
I'm looking for the big upset, and if it doesn't happen here, I think it happens with the winner of Wichita State and Notre Dame. But I do not have Kentucky coming out of this region.
Okay, sticking with it. Crazier things have happened in March, so we shall see. We shall see. Both of you guys like West Virginia to keep it close. Another pretty big line here. Arizona, 10.5 point favorites. It's dipped a little bit against Xavier. Sean Miller faces his old team. Xavier, the Big East last hope, as Villanova gone, Butler gone, Georgetown gone. But back to Arizona, I don't know if any team looked more impressive in the first weekend than Arizona, combining both games to their resume. Randy, should we expect that momentum to spill over Thursday night? Is Arizona just too much for Xavier?
Lay the chalk. Arizona, like you said, they look great, and I don't think Xavier. I liked Ole Miss. Coming into it, I thought it was going to be a closer game than that, but I just think Arizona's, hands down, going to cover that spread. Especially at 10.5. I think it opened at 11 or 11 and a half, and then it's dropped. And I really like the points. I'd take Arizona all day and half. So.
All right, Arizona rolling. Will, are you seeing the same thing?
Absolutely. I love the way the Wildcats are playing, and it's and to me, the more Gabe York keeps hitting the way he has, and the better that TJ McConnell plays as he has, Arizona's going to be really, really tough. I like him here.
Okay, and now to stay out with two statues, two figureheads of the West. A really interesting game here, UCLA versus Gonzaga. The Zags are 8.5-point favorites. Listen, we've given a lot of flack to UCLA on this show, but the Bruins continue to piss everyone off by advancing to the Sweet 16, where they now face Gonzaga in what's kind of like a complete role reversal of programs, where UCLA, the program with 11 national titles, enters as the Cinderella against one of the all-time Cinderellas. Will, how does UCLA make this one close? Is there any one area where you think they match up well with the Zags?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, if they can force, because what it looks like to me is Wilcher is going to have to guard one of the following. He's going to have to guard Kayvon Looney. He's going to have to guard Tony Parker, or he's going to have to guard Isaac Hamilton. Can he guard any of them? Absolutely not. So I question Gonzaga's defense here for that reason only, because UCLA can exploit that matchup. On the other side, though, is Tony Parker going to have to guard Wilcher? Is Kayvon Looney going to have to guard Wilcher and try to find a way to stay out of foul trouble? I mean, Wilcher's the matchup problem that's good and bad for both teams, depending on which end you're on. So I like some of the matchups for UCLA here, and obviously with the way Bryce Alford is playing, Tony Parker was huge last round for them, but I think Gonzaga's coming into this game fired up. And obviously that's not to say UCLA is going to be, tired or bored, but Gonzaga wants this game so badly because they know the run UCLA is on. They beat them earlier this year, and this win, whether we like it or not, this win would kind of validate them in the sense that they're not just the really, really good mid-major that can't get over the hump anymore. This would validate them because, we're going to see tons of replays of Adam Morrison crying the last time they lost to UCLA. We're going to hear people talk, well, they beat them earlier in the regular season, but they can't beat them in the tournament. No, this is going to be a game Gonzaga really breaks out and gives them the total package. They're more disciplined. They're better coached. They've got a little bit more. They've got a little bit more dynamisty on both ends and consistency on both ends. I actually like them by double digits here.
Okay, well, and Randy, are you thinking the same thing? Gonzaga by 8.5.
I like the points. I think the Zags do pull it off. I think they get the win. I think it's going to be closer than that. UCLA is just one of those unique storylines. One of those unique storylines that here we talked about that they probably shouldn't even be in the tournament yet, but they've made it to the Sweet 16. And some teams just seem to peak at the right time. Maybe this is one of those instances, Alford playing the way he is and the way they're running the offense, to create so many picks and opportunities for him. I think if the kid is hot, it's going to be, scary close. But I do think the Zags pull it off. I just don't think they cover. So I like the Bruins and the points in this one.
Okay, and so we've seen that one in the regular season. Another rematch of a regular season game, North Carolina State versus Louisville. Randy's Final Four pick, the Wolfpack, beat Louisville in Louisville by 9 last month on Valentine's Day. So the Wolfpack here has been a great story, one of the best stories of the tournament so far. They escaped LSU in the 8-9 game with a last-second shot, and then beat top-seeded Villanova while holding the Wildcats to just 31% shooting from the floor. So, Randy, I'll come back to you here. Why should we take NC State to advance here? The line is Louisville, -3, by the way.
Well, just look at the way that they played in Louisville this year. They had a phenomenal game. They got, great guard play out of Cat Barber. as well as Lacey knocking down the big threes. And I just think they're physical enough to compete with Louisville on the glass. And the big thing is Louisville has a hard time scoring. NC State, has proven they can score, and right now with the momentum they have and coming into the tournament with a head of steam that they have, I really like them here to win this game. Obviously, a little biased in terms of making this decision, but looking at the way they played them earlier this year, and knowing the way that as we're talking about teams peaking, NC State is peaking. They just knocked off the number 1 seed, Villanova, coming in, heralded the way that they have, and lose to the Wolfpack, which, they believed all along that they could win that game. They proved it. So I love NC State here.
Okay. Yeah, we said that NC State held Villanova to, I think it was just 31%. Louisville's such a bad shooting team that they're looking at that number and saying, wow, that's pretty good. You guys were shooting lights out that night. Louisville cannot shoot. Will, are you taking NC State here, or do you like Louisville -3?
I've gone back and forth on this one so much for one reason. I do believe in NC State. I really do. But the play that Louisville is getting from Quentin Snyder right now, I really do believe it makes them a different team. Because the last time these two teams matched up, now this is a completely different Louisville team for one reason. Because Chris Jones is gone. Now, Chris Jones had a really inefficient but highly productive game against NC State last time they played, and Terry Rozier was pretty bad. My question is, was Terry Rozier bad because Chris Jones was erratic and Chris Jones was Chris Jones, or was he bad because NC State is a bad matchup for him? That's my question regarding these two teams and the way that they match up with each other. Because if it was a bad game for him because of Chris Jones, then I like Louisville. Because Terry Rozier is playing out of his mind right now. And Quentin Snyder is giving them great minutes. Wayne Blackshear is being effective, efficient, and aggressive. Montrezl Harrell is still what he is. So if that was the case, then I like Louisville. If it wasn't the case, then I love North Carolina State. The sad thing is we won't know until the game's over which one it is. So I do like Randy's pick with the Wolfpack going with the way that they're playing. I do think that ultimately they win this game just because I think they've got tons of momentum. I think Cat Barber's a ridiculous matchup for anybody right now left in the tournament. So that's going to be really interesting to watch. But my head says North Carolina State. My heart says Louisville. I'm going to go with the Wolfpack, though. I think they pull this one off.
Okay, so we're both signed with the Wolfpack to stay in Carolina. Duke enters as a 5.5-point favorite against Utah. Will, you said in an article on the site the other day that Utah is kind of in this limbo. It's kind of in this spot that's hard to identify. They entered the tournament with virtually zero momentum, and we said on here that at all the 5 seeds, they had the best chance of getting bounced by the 12. Now, they beat Stephen F. Austin. They beat the 12. Then they come back against Georgetown and win convincingly over the Hoyas. And it seems like they're getting more and more help from guys like Taylor and Loveridge, these other guys besides Daylon Wright. And that's kind of been the key for them all season is where is your production coming from besides Daylon Wright? Do you see it as being enough right now to either stay with Duke or outright beat Duke?
I don't. And really, I do like the increased production from Loveridge in the efficient way that he's done it. I mean, 4 shots and 10 points. You'll take that generally. You want to see a little bit more from him than he had against Georgetown. But like you said, Brandon Taylor shows up big time with 4 huge threes. You get 9 points from Dallin Baczynski off the bench. I mean, those are the kind of minutes that really help a team. And, of course, Dockery Tucker's been big for them as a kind of a 6-man all year. But those are the production points that you need in the tournament. My question really is, number one, defensively, can Brandon Taylor guard Tyus Jones or Quinn Cook? Because that's what he's going to be faced with doing. Can Chris Raves keep up with someone like Justice Winslow? Because that's what he's got to do. And lastly, and this is kind of the backbreaker for me, can Jakob Pertl stay out of foul trouble against Jahlil Okafor? And I don't believe that he can. Okafor is too physically mature. He's got too many moves. Jakob Pertl is really, really good. I love this kid. He's really, really good. But he's going up against somebody that simply outclasses him in just about every way. And Duke will be able to have a matchup that favors them at all times on the court, both on the inside and on the outside. So I like Duke, and I think ultimately they might pull away late in this one.
Okay, Randy, are you thinking the same thing? Duke by a lot, by more than 5.5?
Well, let me first start by saying I think Utah was one of those teams all year long that was sort of cruising under the radar. Maybe not so much if you're a West Coast kind of guy, but if they were in any other region right now, I think they'd be a great pick. But the fact they're playing against a damn near flawless Duke, I mean, their 2 games, Duke just looked outstanding. There were a couple moments to where they sort of let their guard down and maybe got a little sloppy, but otherwise, I think they're so precise right now that I'm going to agree with Will there that they're probably going to pull away late. I think if they have to rely on DeLon Wright, I don't know who gets the matchup there, but maybe they put Winslow on this kid as a shutdown. Maybe I'm wrong there, but I think Duke is so good right now. I mean, so good.
Yeah,
that absolutely. Laying 5 seems right there around the mark. If it were to move or fall at all, I'd be all over it. I think it's maybe 5.5 right now. So, but I like Duke. I like Duke in a big way.
Yeah, we would be remiss in not saying that Duke has also been one of the most impressive teams, along with, we mentioned, Arizona and, of course, Kentucky. Going forward, the last game on the docket, a 7-seed Michigan State is the favorite over 3-seed Oklahoma. Michigan State coming in at -2. So a lot of people here are getting on board with Izzo and the Spartans. But personally, I don't know. I think people are, maybe not you, Will, but people are underrating OU here. You look at the Sooners last game, and Buddy Hield did not have his best game. Dayton did a great job of getting up in his grill, making him uncomfortable. But he also just missed some open looks, too, some things that Buddy Hield does not usually miss. So I think if you're Lon Kruger, you've got to be looking around and saying, wow, my best player really didn't have a good game, and we still advanced. We're still in the Sweet 16. So that's got to bode well for this team's confidence entering Friday. Will, talk some more about Oklahoma and where you see them coming in as 2-point favorites. Or 2-point underdogs, sorry.
I do like Oklahoma here because they can get, again, another team that can get it done on the perimeter and inside. I think what separates Michigan State from a lot of teams is that they have the style of a Denzel Valentine and a Travis Trice on the perimeter with the toughness of like Schilling and Dawson underneath. And then obviously a bunch of guys that can kind of come in and fill roles on any given night. And of course they've got a legendary March coach. I mean, Tom Izzo is ridiculous. He's a mastermind, he's a magician, and he sweats as well as Gary Williams did. So that's always a plus. But the thing is that Oklahoma, they're not just some flashy guard-driven team with Buddy Hield on the perimeter launching jumpers at every opportunity. That's not all they are, because they've got a couple guys underneath in Deshaun Thomas, number 1, of the newcomer of the year in the Big 12 Conference. Really one of my favorite players left in this tournament for a glue guy, a hustle guy. And when you pair him with Ryan Spangler, you've got 2 mean SOBs that are experienced, that are veterans underneath, that aren't going to take any crap from Michigan State. They're going to get in there and they're going to battle. So it really comes down to the perimeter in this game. And my question is, whose upside is bigger? I mean, if one team plays well, if they both play their best, who would win? And to me, it's Oklahoma. And so I'm going to go with them. I like the Sooners here to advance. Obviously, Lon Kruger continues to turn in one of the greatest coaching jobs at OU since he got there that nobody talks about in the country. Another school that he's led to the Final Four. I mean, you could throw that in. He's been utterly fantastic. Not enough people talk about the Sooners. Not enough people talk about Coach Kruger. Give me Hield and OU to Boomer Sooner on to the Elite Eight.
Okay, and Randy, are you siding with Michigan State here -2 or Oklahoma?
Well, first of all, I think Will just made a great point about, the coach from Oklahoma there, Kruger, doing such a phenomenal job and doing it sort of under the radar. It's another one of those teams that, is just quietly winning games and putting themselves in a position to make a great run. However, all that being said, God, Tom Izzo, I mean, he coaches, or it seems like he guides through, November, December, January, February, and then all of a sudden March comes along, and it's coaching and bringing out the best of these kids, and they've responded. And so it's hard to bet against them, especially in this situation. So, it's another one of those toss-up games for me. But, given the history of Izzo and what he does with a team, this kid Travis Trice playing out of his mind against Virginia, I'm gonna go with Michigan State just because.
Okay, I like it. So before I let you guys go here, I want to get we've already touched on it a little bit, but I want to get updated Final Four picks and then championship picks as well as the eventual national champ. So, Randy, I'll stick here with you. We already have 3 teams of your Final Four, but give us that 4th team of who you think is coming out of Kentucky's bracket, because we know it ain't Kentucky, and give us your championship picks as well.
Let's go West Virginia. All right, that's going to fill the void for Tobacco Road, with the rest being UNC, NC State, and Duke. I really like West Virginia, and like I said, if I didn't, I wouldn't have such a big lay on that game. So I really hope they come through for my bankroll's sake. So that would be my Final Four. My championship game is going to be UNC versus Duke, round 3.
Wow.
And if it goes to that, how incredible would it be that UNC adds another championship banner to the Dean Dome? Yeah. I think they would.
Okay.
Still be the only team that would beat Duke in that situation. So there it is. That's a made for movies kind of preach going on from Tobacco Road.
Yeah, could you imagine the UNC Duke rivalry being played in a championship game? Okay, I like it. Thinking outside of the box there. Will, how about you? Give us your updated Final Four. I know Oklahoma is one of those teams, but give us the 3 others and then your championship picks as well.
Yeah, Oklahoma and Duke on the right side of the bracket, and then I'm going to go with Arizona and Kentucky on the left side. I think those 4 teams, to me, are the most dangerous on any given night that we've got left in the tournament. And then, I'm going to go with Kentucky matching up against Duke in the finals. It's the finals that I think would be the best game. I think it's the finals that college basketball deserves. But in that game, I'm going to go with the Wildcats. I'm going to have them cap off their run and their coronation here of an undefeated season.
Okay, so you do like that favorite. Perfect. So that will do it for us until next week when we do know the Final Four for sure. So happy viewing, everyone, and thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time.